Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word for and the race reaction. Cracking start for the 2019 Mexican Grand Prix. How are we all doing this evening in the UK, this night in the UK, 10 o'clock over here right now. Lovely stuff. A good late night stream. All right race, I think a bit tense. Probably would say a bit anticlimactic as well, but it was a good race. I enjoyed it. I think we've seen better, but we've certainly seen a hell of a lot worse. I'm going to be joined by Chamber in just a few moments to talk about the race. I'll try and not go too long in this one for those in the UK, but let's kick things off by having a look at the race results as we always do. In these reaction streams. Lewis Hamilton took the win in Mexico, 1.7 seconds clear of Sebastian Vettel in second place, and Valtteri Bottas rounded off that podium in third. Lewis Hamilton did not clinch his sixth world title this weekend. I think he needs 4 points. Possibly. I think in the US, don't quote me on that one, but I think it's about 4 points in the US to clinch the title. Charles Leclerc, pole sitter in fourth place for Ferrari. Alex Albon was fifth for Red Bull with Max Verstappen recovering to sixth. More on that a little bit later, I'm sure. Sergio Perez, really good drive there in seventh place for Racing Point on home soil as well. The crowd were going crazy for him. It was good to hear. Daniel Ricciardo in eighth place again. Played a great strategy. Pierre Gasly, ninth. You will notice a difference there. Nico Hulkenberg, 10th, and Daniel Kvyat in 11th after Kvyat was slapped with a 10-second time penalty at the end of that race, but more on that later. Lance Stroll, 12th in the second Racing Point with Carlos Sainz 13th and Antonio Giovinazzi in 14th place for Alpha. Kevin Magnussen, rubbish weekend for Haas, 15th for him. 16th for George Russell in the Williams. 17th for Romain Grosjean. 18th for Robert Kubica. And then your retirements list, and he said 19th. Your retirements list, Kimi Raikkonen, he pulled in late on to call it a day. And Lando Norris, who got really screwed over by his pit crew, ended up retiring as well. I'll leave that on screen for a moment, just while I say a very good evening. And I feel like saying welcome back to the channel because it feels like forever, to Stuart. Good evening, Stuart.
Good evening, Sean. Yeah, it has felt like a long time. I don't know which the last race follow up. What do you call these? I was
Race
on last
reaction. Check your
race
notes.
reaction. See, that's how long I've been away.
I can't remember. Yeah, it has been that long then. If we can't remember, it's a good, yeah. Wow, that's
Or we're just
unacceptable. That.
very old.
Yeah, very old. I like that one. What did you reckon to the race then? Did you enjoy that? It was, I just said at the start of the stream, a bit anticlimactic for me.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed most of the race. It was a shame that the sort of what it was building towards never really sort of came to fruition, and the cars kind of got stuck 2 seconds apart from each other. But for the most of the race, don't know what was going on. Wasn't sure which strategy was going to pan out to be the best. It seemed like people were making really bizarre decisions, and in the end, the top four all just sort of ended up in the same place of the track without safety car intervention. So actually, a bunch of strategies all working out fairly similarly, making for something very, very interesting. Um, Possibly, we could say quite a few drivers had threw the race away from themselves.
Yeah, it's that dirty air thing again, isn't it? That we keep hearing so much about, and is apparently going to all be cured when they put the regulations out on Thursday. We'll see about that one. But it was tense. I think I said to you before we went live, didn't I? I felt it was quite tense and, again, anticlimactic, but it wasn't a bad race. I think a few people said it was quite dull, but it had its drop-off, but I don't think there are many F1 races that don't have a drop-off. But I thought it was all right. Strategy intrigue. It's that phrase again, Stuart, that we use so often on these streams.
Yeah, and in a good way. We saw split strategies among most of the top six. I mean, I guess Verstappen doesn't really count, but he put himself in a very difficult position. But yeah, it's nice to see a two-stop and a one-stop and a variety of sort of different tires working for lots of different people. And actually, we saw people like Daniel Ricciardo make a lot of hay on an incredibly different strategy. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It was impossible to do to work out the numbers in your head. So we were kind of left gripped for most of the race, working out who was going to do the best. Because I was convinced Hamilton wasn't going to be able to finish the race on those tires. I think maybe because he seemed to be panicking from about lap 20. And I was convinced Vettel had thrown it all away. But no, No, they came 1-2.
Well, Lewis was on the radio pretty much straight away, wasn't he, saying to his standard race engineer that he felt the stop was far too soon and they were going to struggle at the end on those tyres, they'd fall off and then they'd be in trouble with Vettel coming back. But I was surprised to see the one-stopper work because Pirelli were talking pre-race about high degradation and the two-stopper was probably going to be the way to go and it was quicker than the one-stopper. And possibly even a three-stopper could happen in some cases. And actually the only person to pit 3 times technically was Kimi Raikkonen, and one of those was to pull in to retire. So the three-stopper never materialised. But I was quite surprised to see the one-stopper working the way it did. And I think it was because Leclerc, after his second stop, was absolutely flying. A second here, 2 seconds there, every single lap, catching up to the back of that top 3. And I thought, well, this is his. Surely he'd catch Bottas, that superior straight line speed, he'll breeze past under DRS. His teammate ain't going to hold him up if he's on the better tyres and he's quicker as well, and he'll get up to Hamilton. We'll have a ding-dong at the front between them two. Leclerc will take the win. Hamilton might be able to fend off Vettel. It felt like we were going to get this really... What is it Murray Walker used to say? A barnstorming finish. It felt like we were going to get one of those classic F1 in the last 10 laps or so, and it never really came to that. But I was surprised to see the one-stopper work because, like I say, all they were talking about Pirelli was high degradation, and it never really... I mean, it wasn't... The tyres weren't amazing, were they? In the end, they weren't nice and shiny when they pulled up in Parc Fermé or anything like that, but they didn't fall off quite as much as perhaps was predicted. So, bit of a surprise to see the one-stopper work. Also a bit disappointed to see the one-stopper work. I'm not going to lie, I do like multiple stop strategies, but it did stay tense.
You have to admit, if the sort of dirty air thing hadn't been so prevalent, what would have happened is we would have, seen more opportunities open up, and Hamilton and Vettel would have been, and Leclerc, in fact, would have been, and maybe Bottas, they all would have closed up together, and any one of them could be in with a shout, as we thought with about 10 laps to go. They were, but unfortunately overtaking was just a bit too tricky at the end. So yeah, I like, multiple stop strategies, but it's also kind of nice when you get mixed in with the one stop, so you can everyone sort of gets out of alignment and starts to come together towards the end. And I'm as surprised as you that some of the tyres lasted as long as they did.
If you didn't see the race and you're just tuning in, you hear us talk about strategy, it'll probably tell you what kind of race we got in the end. But were you surprised to see Ferrari pull the trigger quite so early with Leclerc? Because that's something that I said in the stream. It felt like it was about on point for the two-stopper because that, based on what Pirelli's projections were. So I was expecting Leclerc to come in and then everybody else would react and then they would... because I think Albon triggered it originally, didn't he? And then everyone would all come in and they'd react to the drivers behind and it just didn't work out that way. And I thought maybe they might have blinked a bit too soon, Ferrari, maybe panicking over Albon, who, as it turned out, got traffic. I know they weren't to know that immediately, sort of when they're working on their strategy on the fly. It just felt too early, whereas then they're leaving Vettel out, and that felt like they'd left him way too late. Sort of Ferrari pitting Leclerc too early and pitting Vettel too late, and somebody said in chat, that's classic Ferrari, or certainly felt that way anyway.
Yeah, Ferrari do seem to definitely react rather than hold their nerve more often than not. And it definitely seemed like Leclerc were reacting to Albon. They didn't want to get jumped by him through the stops, which I think they had him covered either way. And yeah, like you, I mean, Leclerc pitted before the FOM graphics saying we're in the window for 2 stops appeared, and that's normally pretty conservative on its own. So considering how late other people around him stopped, including people who were on 2 stoppers, yeah, they triggered that too early. I think they might have been expecting a sort of domino effect where Albon just triggers everybody, but Vettel decided not to pull in, and so Hamilton didn't either. And then there were these 2 sort of groups of people covering each other through the race, and that that I wouldn't say that's what lost it for Leclerc, because he did lose 4 seconds in the other pit stop, which it would have been a healthy amount of time to be to having that last stint, but it certainly didn't help because he was on the back foot from then on. Again, we didn't realize for about 20 laps.
Hamilton did a great job, didn't he? To get those tyres as far as he pitted lap 23. And I'm with you. When he made that stop, I said to chat, there's no way. Surely there's no way he's getting them to the end. And he did, just great tyre management. But I suppose that's the advantage. And I say this about Vettel a lot as well, about having the experience in Formula One, in that he knows, look, I don't agree with this strategy. I think we've pitted too early, but if I look after these tyres, make sure that I've got something at the end to fight Vettel with, I've got a better shot than if I go and just try and pump in laps and maybe go for a two-stopper. So I think he did a great job. What would I just look at this things here? He pitted 23 and went to lap 71. Vettel didn't pit till 37, Bottas till 36. So he was quite a lot earlier, actually, than the other two, and just spotted Leclerc there. He didn't pit quite as late as I thought he did, lap 15 in the end.
Yeah, so Vettel went over twice as long on the same set of tyres that Leclerc did in that first stint, which makes Leclerc's stops even more absurd, to be honest. I do wonder, I agree with you. Hamilton did really, really well to hold on to that win, do 14 more laps on those medium tyres even. Do you think his constant anxiety on the radio is genuine, or do you think it's part of a bit of strategy, like similar to Mercedes doing pit stops, and kind of puts thoughts into the head of teams listening in?
I think there's possibly an element of gamesmanship, but me and Jonty were chatting. I think we were doing this. It wasn't in a stream. I think we had this conversation offline. Offline, you know what I mean, not live. And it sounds. I think it sounds. It might sound crazy to you. It might sound crazy to people listening, but I still do wonder. And Jonty was the same when we were talking about it. If maybe, again, it sounds mad, but China 2007. I just sometimes wonder if because of that, throughout his career, that's made him think, oh, I'm not sure on this strategy. I need to make sure they know that this could go wrong and that this maybe subconsciously, I don't know. We're not going to get into GCSE psychology or anything like that tonight, Stuart. But and it was a hell of a long time ago, 2007, although it feels like last year. But I just wonder if, maybe, do you know what I'm getting at? Maybe he's just always a little bit paranoid or over worries too much about what his tyres might do at the end of the race rather than looking at the here and now? Or is it that experience that he just, looking at the other side, that he's had that experience in 2007 in China, and now he's like, right, guys, I've been there, let's make sure we get this right. Do you get what I'm getting at? It is late.
I do, yeah, and that China 2007 was ultimately a massive disaster for him, staying out a few laps longer than he should have done. I mean, arguably it cost him a world title. And it's going to take a lot to cost a world title this year, but yeah, I could see how that plants a seed in his head. On the other hand, I mean, how many wins has he had with Mercedes? Like, you think there would be an element of trust to be like, exactly. So, like, we know what we're doing, Lewis. Just stick to the plan and do what you're good at.
I wonder how much as well is not having Bono there affected him with that.
Yeah, that's a GCSE psychology. We might never know. It's not like it's a complete stranger talking to him on the radio.
I don't know.
And it's not like he doesn't moan at Bono every race.
That's very true. Yeah, I just know drivers, they like a certain. I think Kimi Raikkonen is quite particular about his engineer, and I think a number of drivers are. So just wondered if maybe. But no, because like you say, he's just as bad with Bono, isn't he? But I think maybe just probably going away from that, he probably just his experience. He knows that he's driving that car, doesn't he? He knows what he's feeling. He knows how that track is. But I think there probably is an element of gamesmanship. But I mean, how many times do we come into a weekend and we hear from Mercedes, we're going to struggle. We're screwed. We're nowhere this weekend. We've got no chance. And then you're like, enjoy your 1-2, 30 seconds clear of the field, did you? I think there is the gamesmanship there. And that's part of the fun, I guess. But I think that's why he gets a lot of stick for moaning, in air quotes, on team radio. But I think all the drivers do it. I just think we hear more of Hamilton. But I think a great drive from Lewis to make those tyres last on a track that Mercedes, again, going back to that thing, they weren't expected to be quick on. They're generally not that quick on. They weren't looking good in practice, really. Didn't look good in qualifying. And all of a sudden, they come away with a 1-3 and we're all going, wow, how did that happen? I think Ferrari are definitely going, wow, did that happen? And I suppose the point I'm going to throw now at you and the question to throw at you is this a race won by Mercedes or thrown away by Ferrari or just one of those? It was a mix of both.
I mean, I go further. I'd say this was a race thrown away by both Red Bull and Ferrari. If Max hadn't mouthed off in the press conference and not lifted during the yellow flag in qualifying, he would have been on pole. And if Ferrari had sort of been as good on the strategy as Mercedes were today, I think they would have been unpassable. And I think what we saw from Mercedes in qualifying was probably what we'd see in the race. But they did do a great race, especially considering Hamilton was falling down the order on lap one after colliding with Verstappen.
Yeah, I mean, probably ought to touch on that. We've talked a lot about strategy, haven't we? But the start was quite even at the front, it seemed, looking from the long shot. But then all of a sudden you've got... sorry, I've got a PC just being having a moment rather. There we go. I want to make sure I've not gone robotic. Yeah, there's sort of quite an even start at the front, and then Hamilton got a good run at the Ferraris with that slipstream. He goes for that move on Sebastian Vettel. Bit of a squeeze by Seb on Lewis. I think that's fair to say. Stewards looked at it and decided no further action. It was a bit cheeky from Seb, wasn't it? But I don't think that warrants... I mean, it depends what side of the safety argument you fall on. Some people would say that the FIA should punish before an accident happens. Others say that they should punish if an accident happens. But I don't think there was much in that Hamilton said. It was on the line, and that's what F1 drivers are meant to be doing, isn't it? On the line.
Yeah, I wasn't too worried about it. It wasn't a dramatic move, and he was probably had his own 3 or 4 cars that a bit. So squeeze was a big squeeze.
You've gone massively robotic, Stuart. Sorry to interrupt you. You've gone massively robotic there, mate. I don't know if that's come through my headphones. I assume chat have heard that as well. Yes, they have. So I will see if we can sort that one. Might be a case of exiting and coming back, Stuart. That tends to work for me. But yeah, apologies for that. It's not me for a change, which is a good one. So yes, I don't think there's much now. What do you reckon, chat? Do you think no penalty for Seb? I don't think there needed to be a penalty there. It was on the line, and that's what Formula One drivers are meant to be doing, aren't they? They're supposed to be pushing it right to the line, and I don't think that's a big incident. There was, of course, another incident which we'll pull Stuart into in a minute as well, into turn one, which resulted in contact between... Who was it? It was between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, which left Lewis Hamilton's car a little bit damaged. Obviously, I think, Stuart, you were saying now about the Seb one, there wasn't much in it. Do you think about the same with the Verstappen-Hamilton one, a racing incident? Stewards weren't fussed by it.
Yeah, at first I thought it was... who did I got really confused there. At first I thought it was Verstappen's fault, but it all just got a bit tight and slidey, didn't it? And they just... It's just what happens when you go through a train through a corner on lap one. So yeah, racing incident, it cost them both a little bit, and Hamilton's floor seemed quite badly damaged, but it didn't seem to affect him pace wise. Yeah, much for muchness. I think, lap one you tend to have these things happen. Same with the Vettel Hamilton incident a corner earlier. So yeah, I wasn't too worried about it. I think that's the kind of limit where you kind of just let them get on with it. Let's not over steward people.
Yeah, I think there has to be an element of leniency, doesn't there, on the first lap? Because at the end of the day, especially somewhere like Mexico, where you've got quite heavy braking turn one, and then you've got the tight turn 2 and 3. You've got to have some leniency because you've got 20 cars going in there at the same time. If that had happened, maybe, and probably even the Vettel Hamilton one, maybe if that happens 25 laps into the race, it's perhaps a different story. But at the start, there has to be that leniency there. I was watching it live. It looked a bit more dramatic than it actually was. I didn't realise Hamilton had that much floor damage, though. In fact, I don't think they realised, Mercedes, that he had any damage on that car, really. So, like you say, maybe it didn't affect him too much. But given what that can do to a car's performance, maybe it makes his win a little bit more impressive. But yeah, I don't think there's much in those incidents, if I'm being totally honest. And I've got to say there were quite a few incidents in the race, a bit of wheel banging and some little moments. But I think on the whole, I think everybody was pretty well behaved, I would say. Max Verstappen had a couple of incidents, obviously that one with Lewis Hamilton. But the biggest one, which completely destroyed his race, was in the lovely stadium section in Mexico. Fantastic move. Threw it up the inside of Valtteri Bottas at the hairpin. I think you can call it a hairpin. But goes wide. His rear right tyre clips the front wing end plate of Valtteri Bottas, and that gives him a puncture. And that's That was game over in what ended up being a pretty miserable weekend for Max. Again, I'd probably say, Stuart, that was a racing incident, and Verstappen clearly came off worse with that one anyway. But to be fair to him, prior to the contact, it was a nice aggressive move. But was it too aggressive? Was that just angry Max trying to recover from yesterday and a bit of a sloppy start?
Well, to be honest with you, I sort of see that incident slightly differently. I thought Verstappen's overtake on Bottas was incredible, and I don't think he particularly went that wide. I think Bottas was just surprised he was there because no one really overtakes there. And he did a very late move, but did get it all under control. But Bottas was already turning in and just clipped him. If you look at it, so I think it's a massive shame Verstappen got that puncture, because that was a hell of a move. Again, goodness knows what he could have done with his race had he been able to hold position. I don't know where he was up to by then, like fifth or something. But yeah, and again, racing incident. I don't think Bottas turned in on him carelessly. I think he was just suddenly there, like out of the blue. Yeah, big shame to both of them, really.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I suppose we've seen it a few times, haven't we? Probably this season as well, when drivers throw one up the inside and the driver they're overtaking suddenly goes, "What? Where did you come from?" and maybe just caught him. I did think he was a little bit wider, but I don't think. I must stress, I don't think he deliberately went wide or anything like that to run Bottas out of road. I think he's just gone in so late on the brakes that he's got to get that car slowed down for the corner, and that's just what's happened. But yeah, probably a bit of a surprise there from Bottas. It was a great move. Just a shame it ended in the contact. I guess a little bit. I think Martin Brundle said it commentary, fortunate that the carcass came off when it did. At least there was no bigger damage to the car, so that probably helped him out a bit. But he did a great job to get through to sixth place. Some proper aggressive, a bit of wheel banging, I think, with Kevin Magnussen, who turned in on him a little bit aggressively, and Max overtook him off the track in the end. But I think the stewards saw that as 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, and didn't really do much with that. But I think he's got to be given credit to get through to sixth place. And again, 50 laps, I think it was, Stuart, correct me if I'm wrong, on the hard tyre.
I could just double check.
It was a lot, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. No, it was 60 laps. He pitted on lap 5, and he did 6. Or was that 60? Yeah, I'm looking at the 65 laps he done on the hard tyre. So
it's impressive.
You know, I don't think Hamilton had much to worry about, really, looking at that. And yeah, I think he had a great race. I think it was a big shame that he got, that puncture at the start, and even bigger shame that the tyre didn't delaminate immediately, because then he could have come straight into the pits instead of doing an entire lap and go right to the back. So to come back up and finish sixth was marvellous. And I kind of scoffed on Twitter about him getting drive of the day, but actually wasn't it really tremendous drive.
Chat saying 66 laps, some of them are saying on the whichever 60 whatever laps is still massively impressive on those tyres. Because I was adamant that was going to have to be a two-stopper. I didn't see how he could get them all the way. And I wonder how much his stint affected Mercedes' decision with Hamilton, because he was making them last. He was still delivering good lap times in traffic, making his way through the field, and Hamilton had a bit more clear air and wasn't having to deal with that. So I wonder if maybe Mercedes looked at that and were thinking, well, hang on, if Max can do this many laps, maybe we can keep going with Lewis.
Yeah, and that might have been something they actually fed through to Lewis to sort of encourage him, because I know they talked about how long Ricciardo was going, because he did 50 laps in his first stint on the hard tyre. They definitely radioed him at some point saying, yeah, Ricciardo's still going strong on the hard tyre, so don't panic. But yeah, I think it's those kind of things happening around them that they made them more confident as the race goes on that Hamilton was fine.
There's a couple of people just discussing in chat the championship tables. They might be a little bit wrong. These were done before they were adjusted on the website because of obviously Kvyat's penalty, which we'll talk about in a moment. So I should also say as well, for anybody that's noticed in chat, if you do tune in normally, there is a chat box on screen which shows what people are saying in the main chat, but unfortunately I can't get it working this weekend, so you're stuck with Stoffel Van Dorn, unfortunately for you guys. It was Marcus Ericsson on Saturday, so think yourself lucky, it could have been worse. Anyway, back to the racing. Alex Albon, actually, really good race as well. But I'm with you from earlier, Stuart. It's a race. It feels like a race thrown away by Red Bull, because I think they they had the pace, but I got a bit excited, I'm not going to lie, because Alex Albon, really good start, P3, catching Vettel before he stopped, went for the undercut, and I thought, hang on a minute. All this talk of Albon maybe nicking a win in Mexico, could he do it? And I believed for all of a minute, and then he came out after his pit stop, looked like he just got out in front of Carlos Sainz. Sainz overtook him, which he's totally entitled to do, of course, and that kind of cost him a lot of time, and it never really... That chance of a podium never really materialised, although he was pretty good in his final stint, to be fair to Albon. But I think, I try not to go too silly season on it, but I think just another performance, Stuart, that proves he's probably good enough for that Red Bull seat next year, alongside Max.
Yeah, he's actually been pretty solid since he got into that seat. I think he probably, well, it's tricky because you got to bag Leclerc up in there as well, but he could have got a better result today, I think. I think the two-stop strategy was not the right one, especially when starting on the mediums. That kind of threw away the whole point of having the mediums on in qualifying. I guess Red Bull were just trying to trigger a two-stop avalanche that didn't actually quite come off. But yeah, he had a solid race. I think he's proving himself a steadier pair of hands than Gasly and could be a good wingman to Verstappen next year that doesn't have Mr. Marco, Dr. Marco, freaking out halfway through the season.
Yeah, well, it doesn't take much to freak Dr. Marco out, does it? He soon likes to chop and change. But I'm obviously this is just a reaction, so I've not gone through all the post-race stuff from teams yet. But I can't think of anything else really from the top six, unless you could think of anything, Stuart, before we get on to some of the other incidents in the race and excellent drives and surprise drop-offs is what I'm going to call it.
No, I think we just about covered it. And the only downside is that they weren't able to close up, especially that top four, as much as we hoped. But definitely in that top six, it definitely came out in a different order than we were expecting about 3 hours ago.
Yes, somebody told me at the start of the weekend Mercedes won 3, Red Bull 5-6. I'd never have believed them. I thought Red Bull were going to do it race day. They picked Verstappen for the win. But actually, I'll tell you what I will do on the top six, because I suppose we ought to mention it. Saturday, I gave my view in the race watch along. I was pretty clear on the Verstappen penalty after qualifying. I think it's a slam dunk. He's whichever way. I think I'll try and word it the way I did in the race reaction. What I said that is, I understand that if you're a fan of Verstappen, you're going to be annoyed. I get that. But if everyone just puts aside their allegiances, their bias, just for 30 seconds and look at the evidence in front of the FIA, it's a penalty. Whatever he said in his press conference, whatever happened after that, he's gone past a yellow flag. There's a crash just up the road. He's not lifted. He's then gone into the press conference for whatever reason and admitted to not lifting. He's then gone to the stewards and admitted to not lifting. Penalty all day long for me. Frustrating, I know, for a lot of people, and it kind of would have been great to see him and Leclerc on the front row together, but at the end of the day, it's a mistake, and the rules are pretty clear on yellow flags, and rightly so, safety and all that.
Yep. 100% agree with that. I think, he initially got quite lucky in that the track sensors and marshalling sensors had broken, which I think is why there was no investigation, first of all. And I don't know whether to call him foolish or honourable for admitting that he didn't lift and that he had seen Bottas crash. At least he was honest. But otherwise, yeah, just you got to lift. He had the pole anyway. I think he just had the adrenaline running through his brain in the second that he needed to make a better decision. And he only lost 3 places, and he could have had a better weekend. But yeah, just a shame.
Yeah, I just got excited about Leclerc Verstappen into turn 1.
I know. Well, a lot of us were thinking that being on the second row of the grid could be beneficial to Verstappen, such as the drag down to turn 1. But
yeah,
it didn't quite work out.
No, I get really excited about this whole Leclerc Verstappen next decade or so. I think we're really heading in for. I think we might even be heading into another one of those golden eras with Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris if he continues the way he is, and some other young drivers coming through. I think we're looking good, so I'm quite excited. But anyway, I do sort of mention Norris there. I think I was going to go to Perez, but I've got to talk about McLaren. I'm just going to start off with a very simple question on McLaren, but I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, Stuart. What the hell happened? Where did their pace go? Carlos Sainz was running right up there, had really good pace, went for a pit stop, all went wrong for Norris. Good stop for Sainz, but just no pace after the stop.
Honestly, I'm not sure yet. I'm waiting for the McLaren debrief on this. Obviously, we don't happen to know Norris, but McLaren were really G'd up for this weekend. They seemed great through the rest of the weekend, but it all sort of fell apart in the race. I feel especially bad for Norris. They're still almost certainly cemented into that fourth place in the championship, but still, they could have really had a better weekend here. Can't understand how it all fell away.
No, because I mean, obviously Norris. We obviously, like you say, we know about Norris. He came into the pits. Wheel wasn't on properly after his stop. He ended up having to pull over in the pit lane. Luckily, before he went over the white line to exit the pit lane, so that they could wheel him back. But the amount of time it took them to wheel him back down the pit lane, get that tyre on, that was it for his race, wasn't it? So I'm gutted for Lando because he's. I said in the watch long again, Carlos Sainz start the season. You look at Australia, for example, a couple of other races in there. He just did not have the look for McLaren. Since then, Lando Norris has just had, if the bad look's gone anywhere in McLaren, it's gone to Lando Norris, and that's just the way it is. Team were very apologetic over team radio, to be fair, and he went a bit further than I thought. I thought they might retire him quite quickly, actually, and save mileage, but I suppose, like you say, pretty comfortable, 39 points-ish, clear of Renault in the constructors, so I think they're pretty happy there, but it's Sainz that was a confusing one for me, because he was he running fourth at one point? Off the line or something like that on the first lap?
Yeah, he was pretty high. He got a really good start and made the most of the squabbling between Verstappen and Hamilton. The weird thing is, his second stint they shoved him onto the hards, but then only ran him for 20 laps and actually ran him for 35 laps on the mediums after that. So, I'll have to dig deeper into the data, but clearly those hards were not working for him. I suspect they were going to try and go for a one stop, but just weren't making it happen.
Yeah, I mean, he said, I read his quotes after qualifying. He was talking about their strategy being compromised because they started on soft, which is why they tried to get through qualifying 2 on the mediums yesterday. And he reckoned that would put them 10 seconds behind their rivals immediately because of the early stops. So maybe that's what's happened, got stuck in traffic or something. But it was, I'll tell you what I will say on Carlos Sainz. It was nice to see him a bit in the TV direction today. I know he wasn't very happy and McLaren weren't very happy in the past, but it was good to see a little bit of action with Sainz. Some good scrapping, actually. Some really good fighting. And I enjoyed that. I mean, I said to you at the start again, before we went live, Stuart, didn't I, that TV direction seemed much better today. We even got to watch Russell and Kubica having a squabble and Russell being involved with a couple of others. So great to see Sainz, great to see the midfield. And there was, again, some really good fighting in there, but I just so frustrated for McLaren. Maybe it was just that thing that Sainz was talking about strategy-wise. I'm going to talk about Williams in a minute. That move Kubica made on Russell was great stuff considering their teammates. That's a man who's clearly decided he's not going out without a bang. Sergio Perez, though, he's just Perez, isn't he? I mean, he's one of those drivers. Ricciardo's one, Raikkonen's one, where you sort of see them in 7th place and you go, that's about right. He drove really well. Managed his tyres brilliantly as he just does because that's one of his strong points. Fought off Daniel Ricciardo at the end. I know we're not talking driver of the day just yet, but I think he'll definitely deserve a mention in that one. Really good drive again from Checo, and it was a good scrap at the end with Ricciardo that ended in Danny Rick locking up and, well, cocking up, quite frankly. I think Stuart's back. I had to just pull him back into the chat.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Having wild Wi-Fi problems this evening.
I was just talking about the Perez Ricciardo incident. Ricciardo locking up into turn one, obviously going for that move. And just generally talking about how good Perez was on his tyres and just doing what Perez does.
Yeah, and great place for him to do it as well. The crowd was really loving it. And that's some of the some of the thing I like about these current engines is that you can hear it when the crowd goes wild, but don't tell anyone.
No.
Yeah, I thought Perez had a great race, and he got into some great, aggressive and defensive driving, and also, Ricciardo did well to not push it when he completely mucked up his moving. He could have easily tried to get away with it across the grass, but was very fair as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a bit, quite aggressive on his way back, wasn't he? Do you reckon he damaged his tyres or anything there, or damaged his car at all? Again, we've not seen the post-race press release and that, because he didn't have the pace in the end to keep up, did he, with Perez?
Yeah, we'll have to confirm how bad his car ended up. Obviously, I think he would have lost some initial grip going over the grass. You pick up all sorts of things on your tyres and they cool down. It takes you a while to get them back up to pace. But I just think Perez is on a different level today, to be honest.
Yeah, and I've got to say on Ricciardo, actually, they're big points for Renault because they've had a rubbish week. But they feel like big points for Ricciardo personally, because after... Did you see the video on Twitter yesterday that was circulating? His reaction in the weighbridge?
I didn't. Oh, the same thing he did last year at,
yes.
I think, this track.
I think there's also a picture circulated of him crouched down as well with his helmet, just looking absolutely gutted. A man that I can't help but feel probably regrets the decision he made last summer. It just felt like a big result for him. It was Yeah, I just think big result for Ricciardo. If he needed that, he really needed that.
He did, and thank God. I mean, a shame about Hulkenberg because it could have been a good week for the team. A lot of immediate speculation over Hulkenberg's botched overtake on Perez, whether the brake bias wasn't where he wanted it at that particular point, but possibly. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, Renault clearly showing they don't necessarily need extra devices in their software to do well, or at least do mediumly, which is kind of how they've been doing.
I mean, I know it's not really race related, but I mean, they have this system on the car that's deemed illegal under the sporting regulations or whatever it turned out to be. It clearly wasn't doing much for them because they weren't exactly challenging for podiums. And we go to Mexico. I assume they're not running it anymore, and they still end up about where they would have been. I just find that quite curious.
Yeah, I think it might be many years before we find out exactly what was happening. I don't think it was as big a deal as people were speculating a couple of weeks ago after Japan, because there was big talk of them being thrown out of the whole championship. But I think it was just like a foot across the line in terms of the rules, and they got it kicked back again. Yeah, clearly they are fine without it, and the drivers are good enough to know how to adjust brake bias on their own. But again, we saw this when automatic gears were banned, and drivers just got on with it, and it was totally fine.
Annette in chat says, "Yeah, Renault doesn't even cheat well." So there you go. I like that.
That is historically true.
It is very true. You just mentioned Hulkenberg there. Little incident with Kvyat, or fairly big incident as it turns out, with Kvyat in the end. Kvyat sticking up the inside in what I still call the Peraltada. I don't think it is the Peraltada anymore. But stuck it up the inside, clipped Hulkenberg. He went for a bit of a slide into the wall, knocked his rear wing off, and that was it for Hulkenberg. Originally, Hulkenberg did finish 11th and Kvyat was 9th, but a 10-second post-race penalty for that incident with Kvyat. I don't have any argument with that, Stuart. I don't know if you agree. I was a bit sloppy from Danny. That's not really an overtaking spot, is it? And he's just kind of stuck it in there and, put Hulkenberg in the wall.
Yeah. I mean, it was a bit of a, old school torpedoing from Kvyat, wasn't it? I guess he had a sniff of a point and thought this is the last possible place I can get it, but it's not much of an overtaking spot into what I think, is this the corner that's now called Nigel Mansell corner?
I think it is, yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's definitely a open and shut case, isn't it? There's not much you can defend Kvyat for that. Another some of my favorite incidents are the ones where people are celebrating their win and then the camera cuts to some damaged car on the cool down lap and everyone's just shaking their heads as to what could have possibly happened. My favorite being, I think, when Vettel ran into the back of someone on the way back to the pits.
Flying Tiger says that can now be renamed as Torpedo Corner.
Do it.
Yeah. It's better than... No offence to Nigel Mansell, but Nigel Mansell corner. I prefer Peraltada, but then I'm like that. Got to mention Pierre Gasly as well. Not, I was going to say, shit weekend, but quite literally for Pierre Gasly, if the stories are to be believed, not very well, bless him, yesterday at all. Sits out most of FP3, comes out, does a lap that put him about 7th place or something like that, goes into qualifying, great qualifying session, and picks up a couple of points. So Pierre Gasly probably wouldn't mind a tummy bug most weekends. Really good weekend for him in the end, on track.
Yeah, what a turnaround, considering midway through Saturday, there was all this talk of like, he's too ill. Toro Rosso don't even have a third driver here. They might have to run without a second car. But somehow managed to get himself together in time for qualifying and put the rest of his weekend together. Yeah, very impressed with him. Absolutely no idea where his career's going from here. It's a real wild ride for him, but at least I think we've said this quite a lot actually, but since he moved back to Toro Rosso, it has seemed a lot more comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
He just probably wasn't ready to be moved up.
I think he's just happier in that team, happier with the car, and the pressure's off him. He's performing. He's sort of back to what he was doing last year, whereas Albon is thriving with that pressure. I think there is something to be said about the Red Bull being better now than it was at the start of the season. But again, I know Max Verstappen's had some bad luck since Albon's come into that car. But Max Verstappen has also made a couple of mistakes since Albon has come into that car, and Albon's also had his own bad luck. So he's still outscoring Max Verstappen, and whether the luck's with you or not, that's pretty impressive. And Gasly wasn't doing that, whereas now he seems to be a match for Kvyat, and that's great stuff. And his career-wise, he just reminds me of another Daniel Kvyat, to be honest, Stuart. I think he's one of those that will probably be a midfield driver, but he's going to need... he needs to keep performing next year, because I don't see him doing 2021 in a Toro Rosso. I really don't. So he needs to be performing next year so that somebody like a Haas, for example, or maybe an Alpha decide to pick him up. But long term, as much as I'd love him to stay in the sport, I'm not convinced. He's going to need a pretty good season next year. Yeah, that's probably a story for another day. Let's have a quick look through the field. Haas.
Oh dear.
What do you say? I mean, they looked so good at the start of the year. Their massive improvement last year, really good at the start of the year. They looked good in Australia, had the pace. Were they going to be in the fight for fourth again? It's just gone downhill so far, to the point where Williams are confidently saying we are now matching Haas for race pace. That is not, and no disrespect to Williams, that is not just Williams' improvement.
No, I believe it as well. I mean, we see them on track together quite a lot.
Yeah.
And sort of the Williams straddling the Haas in their positions. I don't understand where Haas's race pace has gone. They're kind of okay in qualifying. They sort of put one lap together. They're not as good as they were at the start of the year. But just the race, they fall backwards, and they had a dodgy pit stop again today, nearly like throwing a tire into a mechanic this time. A lot of wheel gun problems today, actually. I'm wondering if there's any particular reason for that. But at least, is it Magnussen didn't actually leave the pit square before he realised the tyre was missing. Yeah, very weird. What can you say about Haas?
I mean, Grosjean was... If Kubica hadn't made his second stop, Grosjean would have been behind both Williamses legitimately. That's bad for Haas. That's great for Williams. It's bad for Haas.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if they switched to 2020 really early on in the season or something.
Maybe.
They thought this season was going to go a bit wrong and switched early to try and get a jump on everybody else. But even then, I mean, there's a lot of questions to be answered here that I just don't understand what's happened with them. And we were expecting them to sort of, stick in that challenge for fourth. We had a lot of conversations over the winter actually about how strong the battle for fourth was going to be, and I don't think that's turned out how we expected at all.
No, it's been one of those seasons through the whole championship, really, hasn't it? Where we've gone, it's going to be so close, and then it's sort of actually no, it wasn't. But I'm at a loss. But do you know what? I'm going to be at a loss. You're going to be at a loss. Chat will be at a loss, because even Haas are at a loss, and if they don't know, we're not going to know, are we? So. Really frustrating. But again, it's great for Williams, because George Russell, 16th ahead of Grosjean again. on pace legitimately. Robert Kubica would have been ahead as well, so great progress for Williams. It's kind of coming at the wrong time. They needed this 6 races ago, not with 3 races to go between now and the end of the season, because before they know it, it's testing and they've got to try and make sure they're on time for testing next year. So although I think with next year being a bit more of an evolution of this year's car, they might be able to be in a better position next year, but I've got to talk about it. The biggest moment we saw in sort of for Williams was Kubica versus Russell in a really tasty scrap. A lot of experience with Robert Kubica, inexperienced rookie in George Russell, although he's nearly done a full season, so that's probably not fair, but I think you get the point I'm making. Wheel to wheel, no contact, great racing, a lot of respect, and it was nice to see them, even though it was with each other, it was nice to see them being able to have a fight rather than just trundling around at the back, and it was actually nice to see the fight as well. And I'm quite... I know he did make a second stop, but before that, he probably would have finished ahead of Russell. So I'm quite ready for British word in the chat. I'm quite chuffed for Robert Kubica this Sunday.
Yes, me too. Especially, I mean, I don't know about you, but I kind of got the impression that he was fed up and kind of his heart wasn't in it anymore. And I know Russell is going to be showing everything he's worth. So it's great to see Kubica fighting tooth and nail with him for essentially the last positions on the table. Really hilarious that it was happening right in front of Hamilton. He was trying to go for I think the undercut at the time.
Yeah.
Didn't really cause them too many problems. But yeah, I thought that was a great scrap. And as you say, other Grand Prix this year, this would have been something we didn't see live and would have seen on a YouTube clip on the official channel 2 days later. So yeah, good job on the TV crew for capturing quite a lot of things this race.
My mind's just gone to, was it Russell's move around the outside of Kubica in France that we missed and then we had to catch on a YouTube clip?
That does ring a bell. There's been so many like YouTube clips.
Usually
particularly
science.
Yeah, science is route to the points. Yeah, no, I was really glad to see them, and I think Williams were glad to just be seen on TV, to be honest, and not just moving out of the way of the leaders.
Their sponsors were like, there we are, yay!
Hey, Rocket, who make phones and now drinks, am I right?
I have no idea. Honestly, somebody told me they were a fashion brand at the start of the year, and I believed them. They might be. Might sell fishing rods, I don't know.
It's a bit of topic. I know Williams announced that they were also going to be supplied by Rocket's. I think Rocket's like soft drinks arm. So very strange company. Anyway.
There've been stranger drinks companies in F1 this year. I'll say that one. Definitely.
That is true.
You mentioned the wheel guns, actually. We're talking about Williams. But probably obviously Leclerc, I think, had an issue with his. Obviously, we know Norris, but Antonio Giovinazzi had a real rough moment, didn't it? It was the right rear again, I think, on his car. Went to put that on. They then dropped him off the jacks before the wheel was properly attached, and the wheel fell off, and he kind of went off at an angle, didn't he? And real scruffy, and could have been a nasty one, actually, to be honest. I know it wasn't, so that's a positive, but it could have been a nasty one. But I don't know. I think somebody pointed out in chat in the watch along, maybe, as stupid as it sounds, maybe some of these pit crew that have been suffering over the weekend have been a bit ill, not at full fitness, but I'd have thought if any mechanic wasn't feeling 100%, the team wouldn't put them in harm's way like that. Big risk.
I guess so. But I guess a lot of people, if they were feeling ill, would just hide it, suck it up, and just go for it. It's, again, probably something we'll never know the truth about. But yeah, there's been sickness going around. The air is thin. I think you're sort of less on the ball than you might be. But there's been, like we said, there's a lot of tire gun problems through this weekend, and I don't really know what the common thread is, unless it's just coincidence. But I'm glad it didn't get nasty.
Yeah,
and no one was injured. It seemed that kind of thing where one false move and the car could have caused some serious problems. But yeah, very, very strange. We may hear some things in the next few days over whether there was some kind of people feeling dizzier than normal, but I think people will be glad to move on to the USA sea level.
Yeah. And they're asking heat, maybe. It wasn't that hot though, was it, for Mexico? I assume Mexico's a hot place. I've never been, but
They definitely said it was a lot cooler than they were expecting it to be. It's not the same kind of heat as in other places. It's very dry heat, especially at that altitude. But yeah, very strange. I know they were planning on moving it to after the US in some calendars, but that gives you less time to acclimatize.
A couple of people asking in chat about what happened to Kimi Räikkönen. I've not read anything. I've not seen anything as to why he retired. I don't know if they just decided to save mileage, but then I would have thought they'd have pulled both cars in. So just super quickly, Stuart, I don't know if you've seen anything on the Kimster.
I have not. I could look this up, but nothing seems to have come out yet.
No, something that has just come out is Lando Norris. No further action on his unsafe release, which is surprising. The team representative stated that the front left mechanic was not sure if the tyre was secured properly. Therefore, they decided to stop the car for caution. After reviewing video evidence, the FIA technical delegate could not establish if the car was in an unsafe condition after being released from the pit stop. The stewards considered that with the available evidence, it is not possible to determine if the car was released in an unsafe condition. So, no further action on that one, which I obviously, if the evidence isn't there to say that that's an unsafe release and they can't punish, but usually when you see unsafe release under investigation crop up on TV, it's like, well, that's a penalty. So nothing for Lando. But again, if there's no evidence, then what can they do?
Yeah, I guess that means there's not like telemetry recording, how tightly the tires are screwed on. So if we didn't see it, because we never saw that tire leave the car, we just saw the car drive to the pit lane and get pushed back again, then the FIA can't legitimately say that there was anything wrong. And also, it never left the pit lane.
That's true. There was some talk in the Sky commentary about the way, was it okay for them to wheel that car back down the pit lane? But as far as I understood the rules, it was okay. I know you can't reverse in the pit lane, can you?
No, and the mechanics can only rescue a car if it's within the pit lane lines at the start and the end of the pit lane. It is a strange one though, because pushing that car, down the pit lane could cause real problems if someone was coming into a pit stop like further up the pit lane. But luckily they weren't. But they would have absolutely got in the way if someone had that happened.
Just on Robert Kubica's second stop as well. I just started to get all the press releases through in my emails. Can you tell? Robert Kubica saying, it was unfortunate that I had to stop for the second time because of a slow puncture. So that's why he had to stop. Nothing there. Obviously, slow puncture, you're going to have to pull him in, aren't you? So that's why Robert Kubica had to make his second stop, which is a shame because he was, like I say, looking good. But we'll go for it then. Max Verstappen won the official driver of the day. Let me know, chat, with your surname. Or not your surname. Don't tell me your surname. I'm not that interested. Let me know your driver's surname for driver of the day. Who are you going for, Stuart?
Well, I'm not going to go for Verstappen, although I have come around to thinking he had a really blooming good drive. 65 laps. Amazing. Part of me wants to give it to Perez. I think that's a really solid drive. But Ricciardo, on an extremely alternate strategy, after a really terrible week, had a great race, I think. So I'm going to give it to Ricciardo.
I'm torn as well, but I'm torn between Perez and Hamilton.
Yeah.
Damaged floor, managed to make those tyres last to the end, despite his own concerns. So I think Lewis Hamilton definitely deserves a shout. It is hard actually not to look at Verstappen, isn't it? Because all right, he's not covered himself in glory this weekend, but he did go from a long way off in last place all the way back up to sixth place and went super long on those tyres. So it's quite hard.
Yeah. And I would argue he didn't get down to last place through any massive fault of his own.
Yeah.
If he had punted someone off or done something stupid, then I would have been like, well, yeah, you came back up to sixth, but you made a right tit of yourself on lap one. Whereas actually, I think he was just unfortunate. He had a really great race. I don't dispute the official count there, even though he wins it more often than not.
I mean, I've always said when I pick my driver of the day, if they've caused an incident that's 100% their fault, then they don't get driver of the day, however they recover. And I agree with you there, Verstappen. That wasn't his. He didn't do anything really wrong. Do you know what? I always go to pick a driver from the midfield because it's just a little bit different. But I'm going to be even more different today. I am going to give it to Lewis Hamilton. I can imagine what that means now. I'll get in the comments section after this, but whatever. I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton for driver of the day. I think only the second one I've given him this year, which is probably quite harsh. Like I say, I usually go for the midfield because I just think that's closer racing. But it was close at the front today, 6.3 seconds between the top four. Don't often see that these days, so that was good to see. But I'll read a few from chat. As my chat box isn't working on OBS, I'm going to have to go over to the old way of doing it. I've only had the channel 2 years, so the old way of doing it is only 2 years old. So, Perez driver of the day for Crystal Racing. Will Donaldson says Perez. Jack Webb's gone with Hamilton. Sebastian Muller says Perez. Flying Tiger Bottas. Nuke Dukem. Corking name says Ricciardo or Perez. Fire Up says Hamilton. Stephen or Stefan? I guess Stephen says Perez. Scroll through a few more. Nigel is talking about something. I just read your name. Why not? There you go, Nigel. I've read your name. James Simpson, Bottas. Fiery Wolf says Perez. Little Nicky says Hamilton. Chun says Ricciardo. F1 fan Hamilton. Theo Hamilton. Fabio Perez. Lot of love for Perez, Hamilton, and Ricciardo. By the look of it, Morgan going with Danny Rick as well. Guardian of the Blind says not Verstappen.
Definitely not Verstappen.
Not Verstappen. Or Verstappen even. Perez for him. And a couple more. Carbon says Bottas. Steckleton says Ricciardo. And McGath says Kubica. And I can't count because a couple is 2, not 3. But there you go. I think some good shouts in there. Harrison just saying Albon there. I think Albon deserves a nod. I wouldn't say he was the best driver out there, but certainly deserves a nod for his performance again. But yeah, it was good weekend. I enjoyed that one. And I'm going to ask you this because I've asked chat this about 30 times this weekend, Stuart.
Hit me.
I love F1 in the evening in the UK. Do you prefer the evening races, the early morning races, or the afternoon ones? I just love sat here in an evening. I'm more relaxed and I can just sit and chill after a day of looking forward to it and watch the F1 and rabbit on and talk nonsense for 2 hours at a time.
Actually, yeah, I really do. Part of me also really likes the early ones because it sort of then the whole day is ahead of you.
Yeah.
But these evening ones are the best. Prime time in the UK, not a horrible time in the US. Sorry, Australia. I'm just generally sorry. There's hardly any races on a good time for you. Yeah, and here we are sitting down. I could be drinking a beer, but I'm not because I know what happened last time.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm expecting you and maybe some others when we get to maybe post-season coming and having a few drinks on my stream and getting some revenge for me having a few too many on your video. But yeah, I like it. And it's 3 in a row as well because Mexico's evening, US is the same time, a couple of hours earlier for Brazil, one of my favourite races of the year. But I can't believe we are 3 races from the end of the season. When you consider the doom and gloom around the sport, after the first third of the season, this season has flown by. It really has.
And you know what? On a sort of race-by-race basis, it's been pretty good. We had some duffers at the beginning, but actually, some pretty good races.
I always get into this. I often sit thinking to myself, but when I actually think back to this season so far, and obviously we'll talk about more in the winter, but you look at like Australia was good for Australia, it was all right. Bahrain was good, China was pretty poor, Baku was all right, Spain was Spain, Monaco was good for Monaco, Canada was epic, France was absolutely diabolical. There's only been 4 races, maybe 5, where I've gone, ugh, that was a waste of my time. That's not a lot in a 21 race season. I know we've got 3 to go yet, but
But they're traditionally, apart from Abu Dhabi, we've got US and Brazil, pretty good on a normal basis. And I mean, this is kind of end of season chat, really. So I won't harp on about it too much. But it's kind of weird that Ferrari tried the strategy of turning up at the first half of the season and then like going on holiday for the second half of the season for 2 years, and now they've tried it the other way around. I'm really looking forward to them turning up for the whole season and seeing if they can actually challenge for a title.
Oh yeah, if you put the first half of last season together with the second half of this year, and they're dominating. Just lay back on holiday. Yeah, that's Stuart's video sorted.
It is.
But yeah, I'll take a couple of comments from chat. Not too many though, because like I said, it's getting on a little bit. So I'll take a couple of your comments or questions if you've got any. Would be cool. I answered quite a few in the race watch along, certainly the qualifying watch along yesterday. But they're all about interaction. So see what you guys are saying. Max had 4 first lap collisions this season? Question mark from Nigel. I mean, Japan wasn't his fault, but that's still a first lap collision. Again, in today, Mexico. Let me think back a little bit. Has he had 4? As many as 4?
I can barely remember what happened yesterday. So unless I've got a page in front of me with a list on it, I can tell you. But probably
At
he's
Spa,
he's a feisty guy. Yeah, here we go. This is what the chat's for.
Yeah, that's a question for chat. Yeah, Spa, of course, he put Kimi Raikkonen halfway into a flip, didn't he? Monza as well, apparently. Oh God, Stuart, how old are we getting?
It's terrible. This is why you have chat, so that they can be like the massive hive mind. People are definitely talking about Monza. That definitely seemed to have happened.
Guess what I'm
so
doing
let's
tomorrow.
say, yep, definitely Monza.
Yeah, Monza. Oh, what a reckless moron. I can't believe he did what he did in Monza or didn't do in Monza. Annette says, don't forget to hit like, guys. I can answer that question. Yes, please do hit like. And if you are new to the channel, please do subscribe as well. I think 300 subbing today during the watch along. So please do hit subscribe. We're at the tail end of the season now. Everything goes a bit quiet because everyone's got F1 fatigue and the championships are nearly over. And I look at my subs and views and just go, no. But yeah, tail end of the season. Do hit like and don't forget to subscribe as well. Stephen, I'll put this one out there. We talk about it quite a lot, but says we need refueling. I don't want to see refueling back. I don't think the racing was really all that better, if at all better for it. I think when people talk about the old days of F1, and I'm guilty for it as well. I'm very guilty of it. Rose-tinted glasses to a point, but I don't ever remember refueling making... I mean, it made a difference to strategy, and it did give us some good racing, but it didn't... Bringing refueling back is not going to solve the problems F1 has. I think is the point I'm making there, Stuart, to be honest.
Yeah, and I agree with you. There's something more systematic going on, and they need to crack the kind of basics of allowing more raceable cars that can race for the whole race. God, I use race in 3 different ways there. But if you know what I mean, like we can't have these periods where they go into lulls where they have to like preserve their tires or stay 2 seconds back or not be able to overtake us. If we crack them being able to get close to each other, then all these other gimmicks go out the window. We can just get on with having a good Sunday.
Yeah. I'll put this question out there as well, and then there's something else that I'll touch on very quickly. But David says, getting rid of the Q2 tyre rule, is that good or bad? I said yesterday, Stuart, in the watch along actually, that I think now that's a good thing because that was brought in originally because the idea was that the top 10 or the faster cars would all be starting on a softer compound of tyre, which would mean that they would have to pit earlier. It would put them in midfield. It would mix up strategy. It would kind of, a bit artificial like F1's gone with things like DRS, but it would kind of force a bit of overtaking and a bit of action because they'd be out of sync with everybody else. But what's happened is because of the gaping chasm is the only way to put it between the top 3 and the rest of the field, they can now easily get through Q2 on the harder tyre, which means now they can just run long, and we don't get that. So when it came in, it made sense and it was a good rule. Now it's kind of pointless, but I don't think it's going to get vetoed because I think or get changed because I think one team is against a change. I don't know who that team is, but one team is against a change. So I'd get rid of it because it just doesn't do the job it's supposed to anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with basically everything you said there. I'd get rid of it as well. And I think it's mainly a hangover from the set a time on the fuel set a time on the fuel load that you used to start the race with or whatever. And it was always going to benefit the cars that could go faster on a harder compound anyway. So it wasn't ever going to do an amazing job on mixing things up. Um, yeah. So I don't see why I mean, if they're going to do anything, they could move that onto Q3
Yeah.
and see what they could do, and start the race on whatever tire they use in Q3. But I don't think you'd see much mix up then. I say just get rid of it. I think you're right.
Steckleton just saying, should Pirelli skip compounds or even get rid of C2 and C4 completely? Me and Jonty are big advocates for this, and I think you've probably said something on it as well, Stuart, that I like it when they skip compounds. So, for example, why not at a race where they'd normally take the C4, the C3 and the C2, why not take the C4, the C3 and the C1? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just spice it up. Or no, C5 is the softest, isn't it? You know what I mean.
I know
Just
what you mean.
jump a compound.
I'm in favor of that. I'm not. I don't think you should get rid of C2 and C4. I think maybe they should be more spread out in general. The reason they have that range of compounds is because there's a range of circuits and races and temperatures and stuff. So you kind of need to cater a little bit to that, but definitely widen the gaps between the compounds. Because we're seeing not very mixed up strategies at the moment.
What I did want to touch on quickly, and I talked to you about this afterwards, actually, Stuart, because it would be quite cool, briefly afterwards, it's getting late, I know, but it'd be quite cool to maybe get together sometime, maybe, not maybe next week, but the week after, to talk about what's decided on Thursday with 2021. But what are you expecting from that? Because Gunther Steiner says that he expects everything to get signed off. All the deals are all going to be done. Everything's signed off. Doesn't anticipate asking the EU for an extension. Should all be fine on Thursday. All done and dusted. So he's pretty confident of that one. Christian Horner wants the budget cap signed off and then the rules changes pushed back to 2022. So the big teams don't have the big financial gain of being able to, the big financial advantage of being able to get a head start on 2021. Do you think this is all going to go through on Thursday? And I am talking about F1 here. I know the other thing probably isn't, but...
You know what? I actually do. And I think we're going to see something that's quite similar to the stuff that's already been revealed. The sort of guiding principles, I think, came out in the spring or the early summer. Yeah. Everything they've sort of revealed since is in that direction. I'm really, really looking forward to a budget cap. It's not as aggressive as I might have liked. But I think that'll make a big difference. And fingers crossed, they've made a big leap in sort of repairing this sort of dirty air problem we got. So yeah, I think we're going to get to see this signed off. I don't think it's going to be like, massively dramatic. I think the power units will probably be very similar. But stuff around the bodywork and stuff around budget caps and things like that, I think are going to make big differences. And I'm quite excited, actually. We've been waiting for this for like 18 months, I think. I don't think we've ever had such anticipation for new rules and a new era of Formula One before. I couldn't tell you whether they'd delay it to 2022. I haven't really heard any positive talk about that. But this is going to be quite exciting.
I think what makes it this is Liberty's big moment, isn't it? This is their master plan for Formula One. So they're so desperate to get it through. I still think there is a long way to go between now and Thursday. Ferrari have their veto. Mercedes will have a big say. Red Bull will have a big say as well. I still think there could be changes to it, but I'm hoping it looks something like the renders we saw. I know we have to be a little bit cautious with that because the amount of times F1 puts a render out and you go, oh, that looks incredible, and then you end up with penis noses. Because they find another way around it. You just have to be careful, but it'd be great if they look like that. But I've got to be honest, as a Brit, as I know you are too, Stuart, I don't know what gave it away, but as a Brit, I will laugh my arse off if the rules get delayed on Thursday for a year, because it would just be so funny that happens on that date. It's just who I am.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're referring to.
Halloween.
No, I'm very cautiously optimistic about all this. I think again, this is probably a deeper conversation for another time, but I still overall would be in favor of going hard on budget cap restrictions and then going incredibly soft on the actual technical regulations, sort of being a bit more open about them, but saying you've only got like a quid to spend on R&D. I mean, that's a bit extreme, but you know what I mean? So like you don't get these kind of spending hundreds of millions of pounds on like how your front wing flap is shaped. You sort of get these fundamental ideas being pushed through.
McGath88 says, nice swearing, Sean. I said flip earlier. Whoa, you want to be careful. You think that's... But I actually said some proper big boy swear words towards the end of the watch long, actually. But anyway, that's a story for another day. We'll leave it there, though, Stuart. I could rabbit all night and talk nonsense about Formula One. More tired I get, the more I want to talk. But anyway, it was a pleasure to have you on again. Thank you for coming along. And yeah, one more week until F1. Oh, a whole 7 days.
I know. It's race week.
It is already. But like you said earlier, Cota's a pretty good one generally, isn't it? Knock on wood. So hopefully we'll have a good race.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. It's a great track. It's one of Tilke's successes.
Absolutely. But yeah, thank you very much, Stuart, and I'm sure I will talk to you very shortly.
Pleasure to be here. You know where I am. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, mate, and I'll talk to you soon. Lovely. Yes, thank you to Stuart. Just making sure I've muted the right thing there and not you guys. Thank you everyone for coming along. A pleasure. Thank you as well if you're in for the watch along and the other streams for the weekend as well. It's been a good one. I've enjoyed it. I will try and get the chat working. If not, I'll maybe find another driver other than Stoffel. Although I do highly rate Stoffel and I do love my stuff, so I'm not going to go changing that anytime soon. In fact, it might stay there forever. Who knows? But anyway, I will be back soon. I'm going to say soon with more content as ever. No guarantees on the debrief tomorrow. If you caught the watch along, just make sure you've got your tiny violins out, please, for this bit. But I'm coming down with a bit of a cold, a bit of man flu. So the debrief is all down to how I feel tomorrow. So if there is the debrief, then it'll be out tomorrow or Tuesday. If not, then probably not a video to the preview on Wednesday. But I'll let you know over on Twitter. So make sure you follow me over on social media, and all of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.